Phil Andrew was a former FBI agent, hostage negotiator, national security expert, and founded one great influencing group called PAX, P-A-X. And it's good to see Phil also to the not winning. I don't say losing often. Did not win in the primary that he ran in for Congress. But guess what? Fired up the engines and kept going. Phil, good morning. Welcome back to Choose Views.
I'm glad to be with you. Hopefully you're hearing me.
Yeah, we are. We got you. Okay, we couldn't hear you at first, but yeah, there we go. There we go. Wow, you've been on a journey the last few months with campaigning and all that you were fighting for. But like I said, when I think about you and I think about how all of us can learn something about if you don't win, you stay in the fight. You are definitely one that exemplifies that. So kudos to you, my man, and good to see you again. And I know that you've got a lot to say. What has been going on these last few months?
Well, so much of what is at stake for all of us. We all love our country. We all recognizing that there's so much at risk for us, that the threat environment globally is so dynamic, and that the forces of evil are at work. And, those of us that have dedicated our lives to public service and to be part of that national security infrastructure, we recognize that the importance of having competent professionals that are willing to do that work day in and day out, find the facts, give the advice, and execute on the best information that you have to do the best you can. We are at such a unique moment in history where there's been such a consolidation of money, power, influence, data, and technology. And for me, are we going to have a government? Are we going to have government institutions? Are we going to have leaders in our government that want to regulate those things for the security and well-being of our country, of our people, and how we influence the world? And for me, that's the guiding light. And that work, it's always going to be with wins and failures. And it's so much more about how you get up and you respond than it is about what you're able to do in a single day. So for me, this is really just a continuation of the work that I've been doing, since the 80s.
Yes, that's true. There's a song that I think about every time when we don't win what we're going after. It's a gospel song. We fall down, but we get up. And the lyrics of it are fantastic. And I think about that oftentimes because it's one of my go-tos when I'm in that moment. And I got to ask you this question though, because so much is happening right now when it comes to, I guess I'm going to say spread too thin. One of the things that was what Trump and every GOP person ran on in 2024 was that we were going to, focus on the important things that were America First items. And I get that national security is an America First item. It's about protecting our security. But we're failing in education. We're failing when it comes to our healthcare windows. We're failing when it comes to basic economics for people. And for me, national security, those three things are more important to me than how many bombs we can drop. And it looks like we're running out of what we can drop from the air and this war in Iran. So for me, those three things are far more important than, don't get me wrong. I'm a big military guy. I love our military and I love our men and women that have served. But that's the juxtaposition. And what's weird is, how in the hell do you have sailors who don't get what they need if you are all about national security?
Yeah. Well, the reality is you can't separate them. Our national well-being, the well-being of a sailor, the preparation of young people and their willingness to serve and having the tools, and coming competent and ready to serve. These are just so fundamental. And it's not so question of being spread so thin. It's a question of preparation, of priorities, and then really delivering on those. So do we have a national security crisis? Absolutely. Some of this is self-made. But some of this has been in the makings for decades, in the lack of investment, in the things you're talking about that have created this divide. And I would say that some of our greatest national security threats are our divisiveness, our broken politics, which we have not seen a way through, and then the lack of really understanding how corruption really degrades our national security well-being. And this administration has been such an example of really finding those fissures that existed for decades and is now growing those into giant canyons. And we're seeing how that is. But the reality is that we've seen administration after administration, you know, really playing politics and responding to special interests instead of really looking at hard data and making hard decisions that are guiding this country in the right direction. We're going to make mistakes, and there's no question that some of our institutions have suffered. But when you systematically remove some of the most experienced professionals that are dedicated, that took that oath to guide and defend and to provide the best information available for decision making, when you actually try to dismantle that at a time of crisis, you're really doing a grave damage to our national security.
Phil, let me ask you this on the word of corruption. So when most of us think of corruption, and I'm making a very broad brush statement here, so folks give me a little bit of a wider berth on this one. We think of it from a financial standpoint, corruption and money and who's stealing money and who's stealing resources and all that. And that's happening right now. Is it happening? It's like I said last May of 2025, I said people are saying that we're teetering toward authoritarianism. I said, no, we're already there. We're already there. So when it comes to, corruption, that's oftentimes viewed as by many as the monetary, the resources. But do you think, what are your observations about the corruption that's going on when it comes to what you just said a moment ago, which is what made me think of this, when it comes to the reduction of staffing and people and trained folks and talent in areas that actually would keep so many of our institutions propped up and strong? Do you talk to us about that?
Well, the very idea of attacking those within the institutions that have been designed to provide the greatest level of independence, insight, and professionalism in maintaining our ability to decipher facts from fiction, to guide policymakers in making the best decisions, actually working to dismantle that so you don't have to face truth. And the reality is that politics and political and policy decisions we should have lots of argument about, right? But intelligence and fact gathering, we shouldn't. Those teams, those professionals should be able to challenge themselves and be open to be challenged, to really be discerning, and having been in those rooms and, serving in the national security infrastructure for 21 years, what I saw are professionals who were dedicated to finding the best and closest facts they could to truth, and then advise policymakers as best they could so that they were making decisions for the well-being and security of this nation and its people. And whether that be regulating AI, or decisions around what you need to do with our military-industrial complex to make sure that we have the right defensive missiles and those stockpiles, and that giving those politicians, policymakers, the right data to make that, and then holding them accountable to that data. And that's what we're seeing here is the big difference. Is that whether we had mistakes, institutional failures, but this systematic attack on those very institutions that are supposed to provide those attacks, that really leaves us very vulnerable. And our enemies recognize that. They see how we're chasing our tails, and they're advantaging that, whether that be the Russians, the Chinese, the Iranians, or other, big organizations that, criminal organizations. And I'll give you just a great example here. As awful as this whole conversation about the Epstein files has been, and how we haven't given justice to those that have been victimized by him, the national security implications here have never been discussed or evaluated from the U.S. perspective. And there's just no question that you've got a rich guy running a brothel of an island, and the entire wealthy community of the globe is advantaging it or somehow involved in it. That the Russian, the Chinese, the American, the Israeli intelligence organizations weren't advantaging that in some way, and we haven't done anything to evaluate that. And what leverage that's created, what kind of influence and bias that is in people that are currently in our government or those around the globe. And that's just one example.
Well, here's the thing about that. I mean, and nobody get upset and get their undies in a bundle about this. My statement before we go to break, Phil. Yes, we want to make sure that the young women, the girls, maybe the boys that were physically harmed, emotionally harmed, have restitution. We want to make sure that they, as survivors, know that we've got their back. Absolutely. That the people that caused. At the same time, and this is what you're right, nobody's talking about this. I always say this, Phil, or I try to say it as much as I can. Let's talk about what ain't nobody talking about. And nobody's talking about the people who were the players and what information they shared or may have shared, or we may think they may have shared, that has affected us when it comes to intelligence. And for me, it's kind of like, it's not that Donald Trump took documents from the White House when he left. It's what did he do with them when he took them? How many documents were copied and were sent off to whomever? That to me, he took the documents. Others have taken things. But what did Trump, you got a bathroom full of documents? So, I'm with you on that. No, not enough
people. The bathroom full of documents. The very unusual meetings with Putin.
Yeah.
The sheer amount of money being made by people in this administration, and then the degrading of the FBI, the distracting of it in its responsibilities for investigating corruption and following these money. The reality is there's always going to be cops and robbers.
Yeah.
And we need healthy institutions to hold people accountable. And the reality is that Democrats, have fallen victim to this too. We continue to accept corruption in our midst, having come out of this campaign and seeing the way the establishment here in Illinois, that was under the shadow of Madigan for so many years, and the way that it continues to kind of cough up results without the kind of competition of free ideas and, the money, the maps, the influence there, and the hand picking and anointing of people that don't necessarily have the qualifications, and they're not the best and brightest, and they're not bringing the kind of skills that we need to lead today. And then the lack of vision for it.
One of the folks that's been running down to Kentucky for Senate, Amy McGrath, says that in this next cycle, it's got to be about affordability, but it's also got to be about accountability. Phil, let's take a quick break.
Exactly.
The number is 773-763-9278. I'm Richard Chew. Keep it locked in. We'll be right back with more of Chew's Views. All right, guys, welcome back to Chew's Views. Thanks for being with us this morning. I am talking with Phil Andrew, former FBI agent, consultant, hostage negotiator. Phil, talk to us a little bit about this. I mean, we saw this crazy situation with Donald Trump and now the story that's becoming, almost a laugh, and that's this catering container situation. I see that as a security threat issue. All kinds of things could have gone wrong, et cetera, et cetera. And I know that the people are trying to justify by saying there's been other times when presidents have had to go into an area that wasn't fully secure, blah, blah, blah. I get all that. But once again, what I think it's doing, and I was saying this again to a friend this weekend, it just shows our allies that we don't have our stuff together, one, and it shows our, quote, enemies that we don't have our stuff together. And either way, neither is good. Our allies don't have confidence in us, one, and our enemies go, they're easy for, they're what is it, easy for the pickings or whatever the phrase is. But at the end of the day, it comes back to something that it's a connective tissue for the entire cabinet. And I'm including Marco Rubio and others who should know better and be able to do better based on their educational training and all the rest. It's incompetence. It's just, they are all, including J.D. Vance, including Janine Pirro, including whoever you want to list, even Tulsi Gabbard, who left, incompetent.
Yeah. Well, this is clearly not the A team, right? They've been
it ain't even the C team.
And ideology, and that's more important than competency, and more important than having just a very, very clear strategy. And when, at least it's my view on this administration that it is about itself and what rewards it can get. And, we've seen a lot at different points in politics, and we see that among a lot of politicians. But the reality is that we are at such a critical point that we need a clear plan, and we need people who can execute on that plan. And that's what's missing, is that there isn't a recognition that you have to be connected to your history. You have to understand your people, these institutions, how they run, and they run on integrity. And they run on that trust that is built between people, that I am part of something that is more important than myself, and I'm contributing to a thing that's important. And that is clearly not the culture that has been created here. And I'm an optimist. I know that the people that work in our institutions, and I know that they are dedicated to this, and that there's a lot they can sustain.
Yeah.
Whether they're on the Abraham Lincoln, or they are doing tactical operations anywhere in the world, or they are in a QB, in DC, looking at intelligence. They are doing their job. But we have to give them the tools, the resource, the culture, the structure, and most importantly, really the leadership that is required to bring us to a place where we're actually addressing these threats in systematic and effective ways.
Phil, what are your thoughts about, I'm going to ask you a couple more questions before we wrap up today. And again, thank you for hanging out with us this morning. What are your thoughts or your feelings about the implications of this disconnected, uninformed, feckless, incompetent administration? And how do you see that's beyond the obvious, like the Iran war and gas prices or the tariffs? But what do you see as some of the other economic impacts here?
Well, you look, I have never seen our national security and our national leadership strategies as separate from our educational strategy, our economic strategy. And when people just do not have faith in those that serve and the institutions that are there to preserve independent judgment, to regulate effectively big things like the economy, like holding people accountable for corruption, like AI, and these huge national and global threats. If we don't have faith in those people and those institutions, we really are starting from a huge deficit in terms of our ability. So we have to restore that, and I think that's something that Democrats and anybody that's thinking about public service or position of leadership right now, I think that really need to embrace that. I think you have to lead with integrity. Mm-hmm. I think you have to recognize that these threats are so grave that if we're not bringing our own personal accountability to that we're going to hold ourselves to a higher standard, and those around us, that we're not going to invite people back into trusting institutions and those that serve in them. This is such an anomaly in terms of what we've come to expect in terms of people's attitudes around service. That, but I think there's an opportunity if we respond to it in kind, with the sort of equal and opposite of, yes, we are more ethical, that we are going to hold ourselves accountable and prove to people that you can be trusted. That seems to be the biggest gap, and without a plan, without a clear vision, and just sort of attacking and sort of bringing clear leadership to the moment, I think that's where we're going to be. And I know I'm looking for that. I'm looking for that in any sort of presidential contender. Are they demonstrating the kind of attributes of a leader who's going to build trust, as opposed to just attack?
Right. Tell us a little bit about the PAX group, PAX group. Let us know a little bit more about that and what you guys are working on, or what are some of your top, topics right now.
Thanks, Ryan. So PAX group is something that I very purposely formed after 21 years with the FBI, really to carry on many of those important concepts around leaning into crisis and conflict with teams that built strong relationships. And so we serve organizations and leaders throughout the world in helping them navigate some of the most difficult circumstances. I ran hostage negotiation teams, really meeting people and organizations when they were really experiencing their worst moments. And what we find is that having strong teams that have diverse skills and experiences, and then that kind of connectivity, the trust to kind of lean into those moments, not only do they respond more effectively to crisis, but they usually show great resilience on the back end. And that there's some fundamentals there that you can bring to, as you can see, we're having a little bit of, we had some lightning strikes. We're having some flashing here.
Yeah.
But the purpose of PAX Group is really to be there to meet leaders and organizations and help them navigate difficult circumstances and difficult conversations. So that matches this moment in our kind of national and global crisis environment well. And we've got 22 professionals around the country that come out of the military, law enforcement, intelligence, the CIA, and workplace culture, mental health, and well-being, and bring all of those skills to help organizations be prepared for these moments that we're experiencing.
Yeah, I definitely can appreciate that. Phil, thanks for being with us again. Good to see you. Glad you're healthy and well, and
you too.
Keep up with the great leadership. We will definitely be talking to you again soon, and maybe as we get closer to the midterms. But thanks, Phil Andrew, for hanging out with us again this morning. We'll talk to you soon. All right.
Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye now.